The wind howled outside the small, off-world cabin. Ethan sat alone near the fire, sipping hot tea, eyes half closed. It had been a long day fixing broken solar panels on the roof. The storm was loud, but something else was louder and stranger. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Then silence. Ethan turned his head. The sound came from the wall behind him. Maybe a rat. No, rats didn't usually live in cabins like this, especially not on this planet. The air was too cold for them. He listened carefully. Scratch, 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 ... Pause. Scratch. His brow furrowed. That wasn't normal. It sounded like a pattern, not chewing, not digging. It was tapping, soft, nervous, like someone asking for help. He stood up, placed the mug on the table, and slowly walked toward the wall. He placed his ear against the cold metal panel. Nothing. Just silence. He sighed and shook his head. Too many nights alone, he mumbled as he turned away. Scratch. Scratch, he jumped. That was close. Very close. He knelt down, pressed his hand against the wall, and knocked once. Silence. Then one knock back. His heart pounded. He grabbed a flashlight, flicked it on, and examined the wall. The sound came from the bottom near the floor. It was an old section of the cabin. The panels here were thin. He spotted a small dent in the lower corner, barely noticeable. He touched the edge. Cold, but slightly warm around the dent. Was there something alive inside? Ethan grabbed his toolkit and carefully unscrewed the metal plate. As he pried it open, a small gust of warm air escaped, along with the faint smell of something unfamiliar. Not dead, not moldy, something alien. He aimed the flashlight into the dark space. Nothing, just dust and metal pipes. Maybe he was imagining things. Then, knees. Two glowing, wide, terrified eyes. He froze. They blinked. He backed up, hands raised. "Hey, I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly, though he wasn't sure if whatever was in there could understand. The eyes disappeared. Seconds passed. Then, something small moved forward. A tiny hand, thin and shaking, reached out slowly. The skin was a soft gray blue. Not human. Definitely not a rat. And then, she crawled forward. She was small, maybe the size of a child. Her limbs were thin and scratched. A soft layer of fur covered her body. Her long ears drooped low, and her breathing was shaky. She had a broken device hanging around her neck, maybe a translator, maybe something else. Her lips moved, but no. Words came out, just soft clicks and hums. She tried again and winced, touching her throat. The device on her neck sparked weakly. Ethan dropped to one knee. "You're hurt," he said gently. "Hungry?" She didn't answer, but her eyes flicked toward the kitchen. He walked slowly to the cabinet, pulled out a wrapped energy bar, and placed it near the open panel. She crawled forward a bit more, sniffed it, then grabbed it and pulled it back into the dark. He didn't close the panel. He just sat down near the wall, back against it, and kept the flashlight off. "I don't know who you are," he whispered, "but I'm not going to hurt you." No answer. But after a few minutes, soft chewing sounds echoed from within. That night, Ethan didn't sleep much. He left a blanket near the wall. In the morning, it was gone. The next evening, the scratching returned. This time, slower, almost careful. A quiet request. He opened the panel again. She was there, waiting, but her eyes weren't scared this time. Just tired, he placed down a cup of warm broth. She looked at it, then at him. She took the cup, and then, softly, she knocked back 1, 2, 3. Just like before, Ethan smiled. "You're welcome." He didn't know what she was or how she got into the walls of his cabin on this cold, distant planet. But one thing was certain, she wasn't a rat. And she was hiding for a reason. Something had scared her enough to live inside the walls. Something that still might be out there. But for now, she was safe. At least he hoped she was. Asterisk the next evening. Ethan placed a new blanket and a bowl of warm stew near the small hole in the wall. The storm outside had passed, but the cold hadn't. Even with heaters running, the old cabin creaked and groaned from the chill. The strange girl was already there, waiting quietly. Her large eyes blinked at him. She sat curled up in the shadows, her body covered in soft blue-gray fur. Knees tucked to her chest. She looked young, maybe 12 in human years, but her eyes held something older. Something that had seen fear. And pain. Ethan knelt near the panel. "Still not talking, huh?" he said gently. The girl tilted her head. Then, with effort, she reached up to the small device hanging around her neck. She tapped it once. The device sparked and gave a weak chirp. Then a strange, glitchy voice came out, broken. "Cannot speak human." No voice. Left. Ethan's face softened. "That's your translator." She nodded, then pointed to her throat. Voice damaged. The device repeated. Ethan moved slowly, not wanting to scare her. "I have tools. Maybe I can fix it." She clutched the device tightly to her chest and hissed a sharp, breathy warning. He raised both hands. Okay. No fixing. Not until you trust me more." "Fair." She relaxed slightly. Then, after a pause, she placed the stew bowl on the ground between them and pushed it back toward him. Ethan blinked. "Request this." She tapped her chest and shook her head. "No food," the device said. "You?" Ethan frowned. "You want me to eat it?" She nodded quickly. That's when he realized she didn't trust the food. She wanted him to eat it first, just in case it was poisoned. Ethan smiled sadly. "You've been hurt before, haven't you?" She didn't respond. Just stared. He took a spoonful of the stew and ate it. See? Safe. Human food. Might be too salty for you, though. She stared for a moment longer, then slowly pulled the bowl back. She sniffed the stew, then began to eat. That night, Ethan sat in front of the fire, thinking. Who was she? Where had she come from? There were no known alien colonies near this sector of the planet. The area was too cold, too quiet. That's why he chose it to be alone after everything that happened back on Earth. But now there was an alien girl hiding in his walls. He opened his old notebook and began to draw. He sketched her face, those big, shimmering eyes, those long ears, the soft fur, and the scars. He titled the page, "Not a Rat, Not Even Close." The next day, something changed. Ethan returned from the woods with some dried roots and firewood. As he stepped into the cabin, he noticed something strange. The furniture had been moved slightly. Nothing big, just ... off ... and near the fireplace. Someone had placed a small, folded paper with a circle drawn on it. Inside the circle was a strange symbol, something not human. He picked it up. What's this? From the shadows, she stepped out slowly. For the first time, she walked fully into the room, not just peeking from the wall. She stood barefoot on the wooden floor, trembling a little. The blanket Ethan gave her now wrapped around her like a cape. She tapped the paper, and tapped her chest name. The device whispered. "Thera." Ethan repeated it. "Thera." She nodded. Then she pointed to him. "Name." The voice box asked. "Ethan," he said. Thera gave a short nod. Her eyes softened a little. They sat in silence for a while. The fire cracked. The air was warm. Finally, Ethan asked Thera, "Why were you hiding in my walls?" She looked down. Her hand trembled as she pointed to the symbol again. "Chased," the device said. "Hunter, escape." Ethan leaned forward. "There was someone chasing you." She nodded slowly. Then touched her neck, captured, hurt, ran, hid. He felt a chill. This wasn't just some scared alien child. She had escaped something. Something bad. Thera suddenly stood and walked to the edge of the room. She pointed at the far wall behind. The old heater. Ethan followed her and crouched. She tapped her claw gently on the wooden boards. Others, the device asked, voice weak. She knocked once, twice, then paused. No answer, no answer. Ethan knocked back. Silence. Thera's eyes filled with tears. She turned away quickly and crawled back into the shadows. She wasn't just hiding, she was waiting. Waiting for someone else to answer her. That night, Ethan sat alone again by the fire, but it didn't feel like his cabin anymore. Oh, it felt like something bigger was beginning. This wasn't just about rats in the wall. It was about survivors, and maybe, just maybe, something still out there was hunting. For the first time in weeks, Ethan locked every door, sealed every window, and placed his old hunting rifle beside his bed. Not because of Thera, the strange alien girl hiding in his walls, because of her silence. She hadn't come out since. Yesterday, he knocked gently on the wall panel where she usually answered. "Thera, it's just me." No reply. Then, in the middle of the night, a different sound came. Not scratching, not knocking, growling. A low, slow, rumbling growling, something breathing through sharp teeth and metal. Ethan sat upright in bed. It didn't come from outside, it came from the walls. The morning light brought no comfort. Ethan poured hot water over some roots and tried to calm his nerves with tea. The cabin felt colder than usual. The heater was on, but the air felt heavy. Something had changed. He went to the hidden panel, opened it carefully. No Thera. But the blanket he gave her was still there, torn and scratched, like she left in a hurry, or was pulled away. Then he saw it deep inside the crawl space. There were fresh marks along the wall, not scratches, claw marks. Long, sharp, carved in panic. Ethan's hand trembled as he reached for his flashlight. He shined it into the tunnel. The beam stretched into the dark, until it hit something that reflected light. Not eyes, metal. Something metal moved in the shadows, then slipped away. Ethan backed away, heart thudding. "Nope," he muttered. "That's not a rat." Later. That day, he set up motion sensors from his old Earth supply stash. He placed one inside the wall cavity near the heater and another under the floorboards in the hallway. Before nightfall, both pinged movement. Inside, but not from Thera. She was too small to light. Whatever this was, it was bigger. Ethan sat with his back to the wall, rifle across his lap, eyes scanning the shadows. He whispered, "Thera, if you can hear me, please, let me help." At midnight, she came. She didn't crawl out. Like before, she fell out. Her body tumbled through the panel and hit the floor hard. Ethan rushed forward and caught her just before her head hit the ground. Her skin was cold, her fur matted. Her lips moved, but the translator sparked and fizzled. She tried again. Nothing but static. "Easy now," Ethan said. "You're safe. You're safe." But her eyes were wide with fear. She grabbed his shirt with both hands and shook her head violently. Then she pointed to the wall behind him, and finally, the translator buzzed out 2 words. "Not safe." Ethan laid her on the couch and wrapped her in warm blankets. Her breathing was weak. She was shivering badly. He fetched his tools and looked at her translator. Burned wires. Cracked casing. He worked carefully, trying not to scare her, while she kept looking over her shoulder. Every creak from the cabin made her flinch. When he finished, he powered it on. It clicked, then buzzed. "Hunter, still." Inside, she whispered. Ethan froze. Inside, in the walls. She nodded weakly. It came for me. Found me. I ran. It stayed. He felt a chill run through his chest. What is it? Some kind of alien beast? Thera shook her head slowly. No, worse. She closed her eyes and forced the words out through the translator. Hunter breed, created to hunt my kind, fast, smart. It follows the scent. Never sleeps. Ethan stood up, heart pounding. Why didn't it take you already? Thera's voice was quiet. It plays first. Just then, a sound echoed from behind the wall. Not scratching, dot thumping, like heavy limbs hitting wood. Then, a slow drag. Ethan grabbed his rifle and loaded it. He had seen death before on Earth. In war zones, in riots. But this was different. This wasn't death from anger or greed. This was a predator. A machine mixed with flesh. A being made only to hunt. He moved quietly across the room and pressed his ear to the far wall. He could hear it breathing, not fast, not panicked.com. Confident Thera sat up and pointed to the corner of the room. There, she whispered, Old hatch. Behind the shelf, Ethan pushed the shelf aside. Dust rose into the air. Behind its old wooden panel, half broken. He pulled it open, a tunnel, dark, cold, leading under the cabin. Is this where you came in? He asked. She shook her head. No, where I hide. But now, it waits there. She coughed. Her whole body shook with fear. Ethan looked into the darkness. Something moved inside, not toward them. Waiting. Watching, he closed the hatch and nailed it shut. Then turned to Thera. No more hiding, he said. You're not alone now. She looked up at him, eyes shining, for the first time. She nodded with a tiny smile. But Ethan knew the truth. She hadn't been alone in the walls. And now, neither was he. Asterisk. Ethan didn't sleep. Thera stayed curled up under layers of blankets on the couch, her body trembling every few minutes, even when her eyes were closed. The fire crackled gently, but its warmth didn't touch the icy fear in the air. He sat at the edge of the room, rifle across his knees, eyes fixed on the old hatch behind the bookshelf. The boards he nailed shut were solid for now, but it wasn't the boards that worried him. It was the silence, not the normal kind, not peaceful. This silence felt like something was listening back then. Tap, tap, drag. The same sounds returned, behind the walls. Below the floor, the hunter hadn't left. It was waiting. By morning, Ethan had made a decision. We can't stay here, he said softly, as Thera slowly woke up. This place was safe, but it's not anymore. We need to run. Thera sat up. Slowly, her voice came from the translator. Weak, but clear. It will follow. I know, Ethan said, but I'd rather face it outside. In the open, I know these woods better than it does. Thera looked uncertain. It hunts in tunnels. In dark, fast, in tight space. Outside, maybe slow. He gave a tired smile. Then outside, it is. They packed what little they could. Carry energy bars, water packs, medical supplies. Ethan grabbed a heavy coat for Thera and wrapped her in it. She looked smaller than ever inside it, like a scared child going into a storm. Stay close, Ethan told her. They opened the front door slowly. A gust of icy wind met them. Snow had fallen during the night, blanketing the forest in white silence. The trees stood like frozen giants, branches weighed down with frost. Ethan stepped out first, rifle raised. He scanned every tree, every shadow. Nothing, but he didn't relax. He never did when something was too quiet. They walked fast, moving through thick snow. Thera stumbled. Often her legs were weak, but she didn't complain. Not once. Behind them, Ethan looked back. Nothing, no prints in the snow behind theirs, until he looked again. Another set of tracks, three-pronged, deep too. Not from a human, not from an animal, but from something heavy. "Keep moving," Ethan said, voice sharper now. They cut through the frozen woods, heading toward a hidden cave system he once used during a mining survey. If they could get inside and set traps, maybe they had a chance. Midway through the forest, Thera froze. She turned her head sharply. Ears twitching. Ethan stopped too. "What is it?" She pointed at the trees. Something moved. A blur, just for a second, then nothing. They ducked behind a fallen log. Ethan raised his rifle. Silence again. Then, a scream, not human. Long and metallic. Like an engine mixed with pain. Thera's eyes widened. "It's here." From the corner of his eye, Ethan saw it. Just a flash. Leaping between trees like a shadow with claws. It wasn't walking, it was crawling sideways across trunks, using metal limbs with unnatural joints. Fast, silent, watching, Thera grabbed Ethan's sleeve. "Go now." They ran. The chase began. The forest echoed with crunching snow and harsh breathing. Ethan pushed through branches, pulling Thera along. The cave entrance wasn't far. Behind them, something tore through trees. Ethan turned once just. For a second and saw it clearly. A beast made of flesh and metal. Four-legged, but wrong. Too many joints, too many eyes. Glowing red sensors flickering beneath dark skin, the hunter. It wasn't roaring. It didn't snarl. It moved with purpose. Like it had done this 100 times before. They reached the cave entrance. Just as the sun began to fade behind the trees. The shadows grew longer. Ethan pulled Thera inside and threw down a smoke trap, an old earth trick. The mouth of the cave filled with thick gray fog. They moved deeper in. Inside, the temperature dropped fast. The cave was wide and uneven, filled with echoes. But Ethan knew the layout. He stopped near a narrow choke point. "This is where we fight," he said, panting. Thera fell to her knees. "We cannot kill it." Ethan knelt beside her. "Maybe not, KK, but I can slow it. I can give you time." "For what?" He looked her in the eyes. "To survive, to run." She shook her head violently. "Stay." For a moment, Ethan just stared. At her then, he nodded. "All right then," he said. "We stay together." The smoke trap had bought them minutes, not more. Suddenly, the cave shook slightly. Thud. The hunter was close. Ethan placed 2 explosive traps on the rock walls. Not enough to kill, but maybe enough to wound. Then it came. First, its breath. Cold, artificial. Then, its claws, scraping the stone. Then, the eyes. It stepped into the cave mouth, tall, sharp. Its body moved like liquid, but with mechanical grace. The red lights on its chest pulsed. It spoke in a language Ethan didn't understand. But Thera did, her translator. Buzzed weakly. "Return her." Ethan stood in front of her and raised his rifle. "She's not going anywhere." The hunter tilted its head. Then it charged. The hunter rushed forward like a shadow with blades. Ethan didn't think he moved. He grabbed Thera, shoved her behind a rock ledge, and rolled to the side just as claws slammed into the cave floor where he had been standing. The entire chamber shook. Dust filled the air. Boom. One of Ethan's traps exploded. The creature let out a metallic screech, part pain, part rage. Its body hit the wall, metal limbs twitching. Sparks flew from one of its mechanical arms. Ethan didn't wait. He raised his rifle and fired 3 quick shots into its side. Bang, bang. 1 bullet ricocheted. 2 struck metal. Barely a scratch. The hunter turned its red eyes on him. Then it smiled. The skin on its jaw peeled back, revealing sharpened metal teeth behind a thin layer of flesh. It wanted him to fight. Ethan growled. "Come on, then." The beast charged. Thera pressed her back against the cold stone wall, heart racing. She could barely breathe. She had seen hunters kill her kind fast, clean, brutal. Always alone, never surviving. But now, she watched a human stand and fight one. Ethan dodged another strike, this time scraping his shoulder against the wall. Blood bloomed through his sleeve. The hunter swung again this time, a jagged claw sliced into Ethan's side. He stumbled, hit the ground hard. "Ethan?" Thera cried. The hunter turned its head toward her voice. Ethan saw it tanned with shaking hands, pressed the trigger on his second trap. Boom! This one blew part of the ceiling down rocks, tumbled from above, smashing into the hunter's back. It roared, part buried under rubble. Sparks burst from its spine. It wasn't dead, but it was hurt. Ethan dragged himself up, face pale, blood dripping. "Go," he whispered to Thera. Now, but she didn't move. She crawled over to him instead, her translator crackling. "No." "I said. I stay." Ethan gave a weak laugh. Stubborn alien. She placed a small glowing stone from her satchel in his hand. Energy core. Short blast. Only once. He looked at her, confused. "Throw it," she said. At its chest, the hunter rose slowly from the rubble. Its movements were stiff now. One leg dragged behind, and its upper plate had cracked. Still alive, still dangerous. Still hunting, it leaped again faster than expected. Thera threw herself on top of Ethan to shield him, but Ethan shoved her aside and with the last of his strength, hurled the glowing core straight at the hunter's chest. Thump. Click. The stone attached itself to the beast. Like a magnet. A soft whine built up. Then flash, a sudden burst of white-blue energy exploded. The creature let out a soundless cry. Its body shook violently as electricity surged through it. The lights in its chest flickered wildly. Its legs gave out. It slammed to the floor, convulsing. Then, silence, smoke, stillness. Thra. And Ethan waited. Holding their breath, the red lights in its eyes blinked once, then went dark. Ethan collapsed against the wall. His breathing ragged. Blood soaked through his side. "You? All right." He gasped. Thera nodded, though tears filled her eyes. "You saved me." Ethan gave her a tired smile. Seemed like the right thing to do. She crawled beside him and pressed a soft cloth. To his wound, "You bleed too much." "Yeah," he muttered. "That's kind of a human thing." They sat there for a long time, just listening to the wind howling through the cave entrance. The body of the hunter lay motionless, steam rising from its frame. Finally, Thera looked down at him. "You didn't run." Ethan looked back at her. "You didn't either." They made a fire in the cave using sticks, dried moss, and a heat stone. Ethan leaned back, exhausted, while Thera checked the hunter's broken frame. "Tracker is dead," she said. "No signal sent." "You sure?" Ethan asked. She nodded. "Safe. For now." But Ethan had seen enough to know what that meant. If this was just one, how many more were out there? And how many were still hunting? By dawn, Ethan was wrapped in bandages and able to walk slowly. Thera helped him up, her small frame stronger than it looked. They left the cave and made their way back to the cabin. Smoke still curled from the chimney. Nothing had been touched. No new tracks in the snow. Ethan sat on the couch, groaning softly. As he eased down, "You should rest," Thera said. He smiled. "Only if you promise not to crawl into the walls again." She hesitated, then smiled back. "Promise." He looked at her really. Looked, the frightened creature hiding behind. His walls was gone. In her place stood a survivor, a fighter, and maybe a friend. That night, Ethan dreamed of metal claws and red eyes. But when he woke up, Thera was sitting nearby, reading one of his old books. She looked up and said softly, "We survived." Ethan nodded. This time, she tilted her head. "You think others will come?" He looked out the window at the snow-covered trees. "I don't think," he said. "I know Asterix the hunter was dead." But Ethan couldn't relax. Even as the fire warmed the cabin, even as Thera prepared a hot drink with her trembling hands, something inside him stayed tense. It was too easy. Not the fight, but the ending. No signal, no backup. No killer machine comes without a leash. Thera sat across from him on the floor, her fur still singed in places. Her translator whispered softly between sips of tea. "You're thinking too loud." Ethan blinked. "What?" She smiled faintly. "Your face? Always thinking." He leaned back, groaning as his side throbbed. "I just know how things work." That thing didn't come alone. Thera nodded, the smile fading. "I know hunter breeds always come in pairs, sometimes packs." Ethan sat forward quickly. "Wait, what?" She looked away. "They test the target. One attacks. One watches. If target fights back, more." "Come." Ethan stood up slowly, grabbing his rifle. "How much time?" Thera hesitated. "I don't know. They send data to the maker, but if the signal broke, they might wait. Or they might come to find the lost one." A toe may turn to the window. A blanket of snow covered the land outside. But even now, in the white stillness, he felt watched, and then he saw it, far off, near the edge of the woods. A single red light, blinking once, then vanishing. "They're already here," he whispered. By midday, Ethan was outside stacking crates, dragging power cables, and wiring old mining batteries to his cabin's perimeter. Thera helped quietly. She worked fast, tying motion sensors to trees, covering wires with snow. "This is your home," she said softly, "and you protect it." Ethan paused, looking at her. It was just a quiet place for an old man to hide. Now it's something else. She tilted her head. "A fortress," he chuckled. "No, not strong enough." She thought for a moment. "Then what is it?" He smiled, despite the cold. "A reason." That night, the cold returned with sharp winds. Ethan sat at the fire, rifle across his lap again. But this time, Thera sat next to him. They had wired traps, powered the old shock fence, reinforced the cabin walls. But the most powerful defense wasn't any of pop vent. It was the fact that someone had decided not to run. Ethan sipped his tea. "You? Ever think about what you'll do when this is all over?" Thera blinked slowly. "My kind doesn't think of after, only next." He nodded. "Sounds like humans, always moving, never healing." Thera looked at the fire. "Allah. You stayed. You helped me. Even when I hid in your walls." He shrugged. "You knocked." Around midnight, the first sensor tripped. A soft red light blinked on the control pad. South side. Treeline. Ethan stood. "It's time." Thera moved to the control box, flipping a small lever. The outer traps armed. Electric buzz filled the air. Ethan turned off every light in the cabin. Only the fire remained. Then the second alarm beeped. "North window, too fast." Ethan moved to the window, saw nothing. Then cracked the wall behind him shook. Thera shouted, "Roof, A." Heavy thud landed on the ceiling. They weren't sneaking anymore. They were testing. Ethan pointed toward the hallway. Trap corridor. Now they moved fast. The hallway had metal walls, Ethan reinforced with heat coils and pressure plates. If they could lure one in, another crash on the far end. Then a red eye peered in through the window. Thera froze. But Ethan, didn't he? Raised his rifle and fired. Bang! Glass shattered, sparks flew. Something outside screamed. Then silence again. Minutes passed, then movement. The door flew open, metal bent and torn. A new hunter stepped in. This one, larger, sharper, blacker. Its eyes scanned the room. Locked onto Thera, but Ethan stepped in between. "No one touches her," he said. The hunter tilted its head. A cold, flat voice came from its chest. "Stand aside, human. She is not yours." Ethan didn't blink. "No, she's not mine." Oh. "She's not yours either." The machine's claws clicked together. "You will die for her." Ethan raised the rifle. Maybe. The trap corridor was ready. Ethan moved back slowly, baiting the hunter toward it. The floor creaked just enough to draw the beast in. Claws scraped tile. Red eyes glowed. Thera flipped the switch. Snap. Electricity poured down the corridor. Blue. Arcs danced along the walls. The hunter shrieked, but didn't stop. It pushed forward Devon with its body burning. Ethan waited until the last second and slammed a trigger under his boot. Boom. The blast shook the walls. Smoke filled the air. Ethan coughed and leaned on the wall, ears ringing. The hallway was now a scorched mess of melted metal and black stone. The hunter's body twitched, then fell, still, dead, maybe. Ethan looked down, blood dripping from his arm. He smiled faintly. "That's two." Thera rushed over, grabbing his arm. "You're hurt." "I'm fine," he said. She looked at him like she knew he wasn't. But she didn't argue. She just held his arm tighter. "You stood alone," she whispered. Ethan looked around the half-destroyed cabin, then down at her. "No," he said softly. "Not anymore." The cabin was no longer quiet. Wires ran across the walls. The roof had new metal plates. Smoke still curled from one corner of the hallway. And in the center of it all, Ethan sat on the floor, arm in a sling, eyes half open. He didn't move much anymore. His side still hurt. And his shoulder was stiff from the last blast, but he was alive, and so was Thera. She stepped in from outside, her fur wrapped in a thick human coat. A soft snow fell behind her, but her eyes were calm for once. There was no fear in them, only purpose. She walked to the table and placed a small metal chip down in front of Ethan. He looked up, tired but curious. "What's this?" "Signal blocker," she said with a soft smile. "I found parts in the dead ones." "Spine, built it this morning." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You built that?" "Alone," she nodded. "Watched you, learned." He chuckled. "Guess I'm a good teacher." She sat across from him. "You're more than that." There was a silence between them, not empty, but warm. For the first time, there were no scratching sounds in the app. Walls, no metal claws. No blinking red lights, just the sound of a quiet world. Healing. Days passed. Then a week, Ethan healed slowly, with Thera helping every step of the way. She cooked now mostly strange mixes of human and alien food. Some of it tasted like old socks. But Ethan never complained. She fixed the windows with tools too large for her hands, but managed somehow. And at night, he didn't hide in the walls anymore. She sat by the fire, talked, laughed. She told Ethan about her home world, green skies, floating cities, laughter in the wind. She spoke of her people, the gentle healers and quiet singers. A race built on peace. Not war. That's why the hunters were made. Not by her kind, but by others who believed peace was weakness. Ethan listened to every word, and for the first time since he'd come to this frozen planet, he didn't feel alone. One morning, while fixing a satellite dish on the roof, Ethan saw movement in the trees again. He reached for his rifle. Instinctively, but paused. It wasn't a red light, it was blue, and it blinked. Carefully, he watched through his scope. Then his eyes widened. Not 1-3 small forms. Thin, tired, wearing cloaks made of leaves and frost. Children, alien children. They stood just past the tree line. Unsure, Ethan slowly climbed down and called. Into the cabin, Thera. She came running, eyes wide. When she saw them, she froze. One of the smallest stepped forward and held up a wooden carving. It was the same symbol Thera had once drawn for Ethan, her name. They took the children and Thera. Cried when she saw the smallest one, her cousin. She thought she was the only survivor, but the truth was, others had escaped too. They had hidden, in woods, in holes, in walls, just like she had. But something had changed now. There was a signal, a light in the dark, and that signal was Ethan's. Cabin Noor came over the next few days, not many. Just a handful. A teenage girl missing one arm, an older male with white fur and half-blind eyes, a baby wrapped in cloth. Silent from fear, Thera helped each one. Fed them, clothed them, protected them. Ethan fixed the floors, expanded the bunk area, even connected the old communications relay again. They didn't run anymore. They built together, one night. As snow fell outside and the fire crackled. Within, Thera sat beside Ethan with a warm drink in hand. "You could leave," she said softly. Ethan looked at her. "Why would I do that? You've done enough. You saved us. Twice." He smiled. "I didn't just save you." She looked confused. He continued, voice low. "I saved myself. I was rotting in this cabin. Just breathing, not living." Thera touched his bandaged arm gently. "You live now." He nodded. "Yeah, because of you." Behind the cabin, the old wall panel still sat open, a reminder of where she first hid. Where she knocked. Where he answered. Ethan didn't fix it. He left it open like a window to the past, not to remember the fear, but to remember the beginning. Weeks later, they built a tower small and simple, with a blue light on top, not a distress signal, not a warning, but a message to anyone passing near this frozen world. You're not alone, and if you knock, someone will answer.